I still have no idea if I'll ever do a flip again. I have no idea if I'll get back to any kind of level of gymnastics that I used to be at. I actually don't really even know if I'll be running and jumping again. I think I will, but that has not yet come back to me very well. So it's like really painful and really joyful at the same time, but I would take the happy parts of it over avoiding it any day.
Welcome to the Injured Athletes Club podcast, the show that helps athletes cope with sports injuries and to bounce back stronger. I'm mental skills coach Carrie Jackson. We're sorry you're here, but we're glad you're with us.
And I'm journalist Cindy Kuzma. This week, our guest is personal trainer, American Ninja Warrior, competitive adult gymnast, and masters track athlete Mia Lazarewicz. But before we get into the interview, we wanted to share a key resource with you.
Yes. So you are about to hear in this episode, we talked a lot about the impact of your support system. So I wanted to share this key resource with you. Sometimes it can feel so isolating to be injured and you feel like you're alone, but you are absolutely not alone. So we've got two resources actually to help build your support system. One is our Facebook support group, the Injured Athletes Club. So you can head over there if you're not a part of that group already and request to join. It's an incredibly supportive place to be where other people are there and absolutely get it. And if you want a deeper connection with some other injured athletes, you can also make sure to check out our rebound coaching groups where you get to go through an 8-week program with other injured athletes and connect with them in a way that it's just so incredibly powerful. So we'll go through different curriculum. We do a deep dive on the rebound book concepts. So you get homework assignments and you also get to do it with a group of absolutely amazing people. I mean, the friendships that get forged through these groups is really, really powerful. So if you're looking for some extra support, definitely head over to our website and get on the wait list for our upcoming rebound coaching groups.
Yes. Thank you, Carrie, for sharing that and for offering that. And we also want to give a big thank you to our exclusive sponsor for the season, Lever Movement. They are the creators of the Lever System, an innovative way to reduce your body weight while exercising on a treadmill. And you'll hear a little bit more about them later on. But in the meantime, let's get on to this week's show. So our guest this week is Mia Lazarewicz. And as I mentioned, she has many titles and a wide-ranging fitness background. She's a personal trainer, strength and conditioning coach, co-founder of the Amplify Fitness gym in Boston, an American Ninja Warrior, a masters track athlete, an adult gymnast, and we'll hear more about that, a lot more about that in this episode. And she's author of the book, Becoming a Personal Trainer. And Mia, about a year and a half ago, had a pretty devastating, catastrophic injury. And she does talk a little bit about how it happened. So just a heads up on that. It was during a gymnastics training session. And so I know it's not always easy to talk about these things, but I'm so grateful to her for sharing the story of what happened and how she has coped with it afterwards. I really loved this conversation. I mean, it was hard to hear some of the details of what she went through, just as I know it's hard to share sometimes, but man, the lessons that she has learned from all of this are just so profound. And we talk a lot about the issue of identity, which is something that she says and talks openly about how she's still grappling with. And we talk a lot about that with all of the injured athletes in the Injured Athletes Club, whether your injury is a temporary setback or something that's a little bit more life and career altering like hers was. It can be just so hard to let go of the identity of the person you thought that you were and the things that you thought you could do. And whether that's like the name of the identity, I'm a gymnast, I'm a runner, or even just like as Mia kind of talks about your concept of yourself and what you're up for and what your personality is like. There's so much that can change. So hearing her talk about that is really, I think it's just a deeper level maybe than we've ever talked about it on the show before. And I'm really glad we got to have that conversation with her.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the parts that stood out to me about our interview with Mia, and just that she was very honest about the struggle with identity, and that in some ways that was the biggest challenge for her in talking about how there's part of her that misses the person that she was before she got injured. And so that was really, really powerful. She just touched on so many things that I know we hear from all of you so much. So you're really going to identify with a lot of the the struggles and that she went through. And she talked about support system, and she had an incredible support system. And I loved hearing those stories. And then also, towards the end, she also touched on the struggle of balancing reality with hope. And that's a topic that we talk about in the rebound coaching groups. That's a really big topic that we don't always talk about. So I loved that she touched on that too. So really, really incredible interview with Mia that you guys get to listen to.
Yeah. And I know we're making it sound serious and heavy, and it is, but she's also really funny. And so you're going to just enjoy listening to this too.
Actually,
we laughed a lot too. So we can't wait for you to listen. Here is our interview with Mia. Mia, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us on the Injured Athletes Club.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So our tagline around here is, we're sorry you're here, but we're glad you're with us. And we know injury and recovery can be a roller coaster with lots of ups and downs along the way. And I have a feeling we'll talk through a few of those today. But before we get into all of them, we just want to know, Mia, how you're doing today.
Thank you for asking. Hello. I am sorry to be here and also glad to be here. It's an excellent tagline for this journey. I am medium, I would say. We'll talk about it more, but I had a catastrophic injury in August of 2023 that really changed my life, and still very much in recovery from it. So on one hand, I've come much further than anybody thought that I would to this point. And on the other hand, I've got a whole mountain in front of me that I'm still aiming towards.
Yeah. And again, that's definitely what we'll talk about today. But before we even get into kind of the details of the injury, I mean, you have like such an eclectic and wide ranging background in sports and fitness. And I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about how injuries kind of are viewed in things like Ninja Warrior and in sports like masters track and adult gymnastics. Because I know Carrie and I are also masters athletes, and we know that our bodies definitely change with age. And I'm kind of curious about how you thought about injury and all of that in your activities and in your work as a trainer, even before you got hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. Injuries are obviously, they come with the territory, whether you're an athlete or not. And that's something that I always try to teach my clients. I've been a full-time trainer for about 16 years now. I love doing it. It's wonderful work. I have seen a lot of injuries over the years. We get people once they finish physical therapy and come to us next. So we're sort of bridging the gap between late stage physical therapy and early stage personal training and trying to get people fully back to where they need to be or want to be. In sports, it's kind of how are injuries viewed? All three sports that I love view injuries very differently. So in gymnastics, especially when I was growing up, an injury was like a badge of honor. You think of Carrie Strug in the 96 Olympics was sort of an icon. I was 12 years old and very much an iconic moment for me. And the older I got, the more I was like, oh my God,
right.
Oh my God, they put her through that and they didn't need to, and they should have known it every minute that she didn't need to endure that. And so when I was a kid, the lore of massive injuries and fighting through the pain and all that was very strong. And the older I've got, the more I've realized how, to put it bluntly, insane that is. It's really not conducive to any kind of performance or recovery, as you both know. And in track, my track experience is basically only masters track. I did, when I quit gymnastics in high school because I was tired of it, I did one season of high school track, which was a total disaster in almost every way that it could be. And I did not participate in track again until I was 39 years old. So I can't comment to growing up with track injuries. That's a whole different world. Ninja Warrior is the maybe opposite of gymnastics, where nobody wants to be hurt. Nobody takes pride in it. Everyone's incredibly bummed when someone gets hurt. We call them ninjuries in Ninja Warrior.
That's great. I haven't heard that.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Nobody wants an injury there. It's for such an aggressive sport. It's not actually as injury prone. Dislocated shoulders are the big one for sure in terms of acute injuries. But, for chronic injuries, it's mostly elbow tendinopathies is where people end up with all of the pulling and hanging that they do. So there are some rough ones, but they're pretty rare. So in Ninja Warrior, it's such an uplifting sport. It's an incredibly positive community. Injuries don't necessarily have a place there in the way that they sometimes do in other sports, where people are really encouraged to battle through it.
Right. That's so interesting to be a part of sports that view it so very differently.
Yes.
So with all of that, like, how do you view, like, when you think about your own personal experiences and like injury as potentially part of, right? And in your case, absolutely part of, right? Like, how are you viewing injuries in all of those different realms, including your personal trainer work, like before you had your major injury?
Yeah, I like to think, even after my major injury, I like to think that I'm quite zen about injuries. They, as I said in the beginning, they come with the territory of being human. When I first got my most recent accident, when I got hurt, all of a sudden I was flooded with stories from other people who stepped off a curb and broke both their legs, who fell down a hill and broke both their legs, who were in car accidents. And of course, sport poses all kinds of risks. I think we all understand that when we participate in any kind of athletic endeavor. But to me, even massive injuries, even my own massive life-changing injuries, the minute this one happened, I was like, okay, well, this is what we're doing now. It's been a battle. I'm not saying it has been an easy thing, and it's not easy to deal with a sprained ankle, and it's not easy to deal with a broken finger, but and all the way up to really catastrophic injuries. But I think when people think of it as just something that comes with being a human, it is somehow easier to understand that this is just a part of life and a part of what you're going through, and that it's not always going to be like this no matter what happens with your injury. It's not going to be like it is at the beginning. So when I have people who come into me at the gym hurt, I really try to talk them off the ledge right away and just say, you know what, sometimes they're blaming themselves for what happened or feeling deep regret for making that instant decision. And I'm like, you know what, this could have happened a million ways.
Yep.
And it just happened to happen the way that it did.
Yeah.
That's such a good point. We talk a lot about normalizing injury in sport and that it's just part of the journey, but you're so right. It's part of like the human journey of being in a body, period.
Totally. And it's really hard sometimes, I think, to not get bogged down by that, because if you start thinking about it too much, you're going to be afraid of doing anything.
Right.
Yeah. So understanding that the risk exists, I think, takes the anxiety level down a little bit, almost ironically.
Well, you kind of mentioned, you started talking a little bit about gymnastics in that last answer, and how you did compete at a younger age and through into adulthood. And again, before we get into the injury, I wondered if you could just tell us a little bit more about that, because you write really beautifully about it in a Medium post that we're going to link to in the show notes, and we'll probably refer back to again. But what did the sport bring to your life as a kid and then as a grown-up? Because it sounds like your relationship was pretty different.
Yes, I love gymnastics. I have always loved it since I started when I was probably 3 or 4 years old. My grandmother was tired of me launching myself off of the couch and the beds in all directions, and suggested that my parents might try putting me in a gymnastics class. And it has stuck for the 36 years since then. It's a beautiful sport. It's an incredible sport. As a kid, I was not particularly talented at gymnastics. I was a very good worker. So I achieved a relatively high level in gymnastics, not college level, just below it. And as I got into my teens, I got very uncomfortable with my body. I got very scared of gymnastics. I had an accident when I was in 7th grade where I shattered my arm doing gymnastics at a gymnastics meet, actually, which never bothered me when I was 12. But when I was 16 or 17, it came back, which I now find very interesting. It took 4 or 5 years before the mental blocks and the fear and crying at practice every day came back. And so I quit in late high school because I couldn't handle that mental block any longer. I wouldn't even do a cartwheel, let alone anything more than that. My body was just not having it. And then I went to college. And I said, I'm never doing gymnastics again. And I went to the activity fair on like the first week of school. And I went to Tulane University in New Orleans, and there was a Tulane gymnastics club. And my friend Mike was standing there, and he was like, hey, you are a gymnast. You should do gymnastics. And I said, I'm never doing gymnastics again. And he's like, well, join the club. You don't have to do any gymnastics when you come to the gymnastics club. He's like, just come and sit on the mat and hang out with us. And I said, okay, fine. And I was president of the club 6 months later. So,
that's awesome.
So after that, I never stopped doing gymnastics again. Interestingly, I moved to France after college and I found a gym in France and I practiced with them, which was a delight. They were very nice to let me just come and hang around in the gym, quite literally. And when I graduated and lived in France. And then when I came back to Boston, I discovered the adult gymnastics team, the first adult gymnastics team in the country, which is Jurassic Gymnastics in Boston, fortunately for me, and joined it. And there were just a few of us in 2011 doing that. And now we have more than 70 members who compete at all levels, all ages. It's really such a delight. It totally transformed my view of adult sports and the kind of friendships that you can make. And when I did get hurt at gymnastics with we call ourselves the dinosaurs. So when I got hurt with the dinos, they rallied in a way that in Rebound, your entire chapter about finding support, like the dinos were it. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're a little less, I guess, than a year and a half out from that injury. And we've mentioned it a couple times. And knowing that it's not always easy to talk about, do you mind kind of taking us back to where you were in your life and your sport at the time and telling us what happened?
I don't mind at all. I'm happy to share anything. I may very well cry on the way through this recording, but if you're good with that, I'm totally good with that. And so it was August 2023. My gymnastics team goes every year to Flip Fest in Crossville, Tennessee, which is one of the national team training centers for gymnastics. So at other times in the year, people like Simone Biles, Suni Lee, Gabby Douglas, et cetera, will practice there. It's a phenomenal gym. We go once a year because it's a delight to train on elite equipment. It's something that you get to do very rarely. And this once a year camp is it. So a couple dozen dinos go every year. It's a whole weekend camp, for lack of a better word. And it's a time that we always practice new tricks. And I was feeling really great. Actually, I'd had great couple practices. And I was trying a new tumbling pass, which was not new skills for me, but new skills to link together. And the best I can describe it is that everything went like 1% wrong at the same time. And when you have enough 1%s, they end up really going haywire. And in rebounding from one skill to the next, I was connecting two flips. I basically was a little bit too high, had a little bit too much power, a little bit too much twist, a little bit too much rotation. It was just a tiny bit too much of everything. And what that ended up doing was just shattering both my legs on the rebound in a way that I didn't even know legs could be shattered. And ended up, I was tumbling into a foam pit. Thank goodness, actually. So I broke my legs on the trampoline. It was on a tumble track, going from one skill to the next, and then landed in the foam pit. And it was in the foam pit that everything sort of collapsed in a way that I sort of realized the immediate gravity of the situation. And what ended up, I found out later, going on was 4 shattered bones, tib fib on both sides. I had 12 ruptured ligaments in total, 3 ruptured tendons. And then I had badly dislocated the talus, the foot bone, off of my tibia and off of my heel bone. So I had essentially dismantled the entire ankle joint. My feet were simply just not attached to my legs anymore. Mm-hmm. None of which I knew in the foam pit, which was the best.
Yeah, right. Which probably, thank God. Yeah.
I knew it was really bad. And I closed my eyes and I said, whatever's going on down there. I knew both my legs were broken. That was all that I knew. And I said, I'm just going to close my eyes and I'm not going to open them again, because I know if I see whatever's happening there, I will not recover from it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's so interesting, because sometimes we'll talk about different types of coping skills. And when I'll ask, like, especially when I was teaching, I used to be a professor of sports psychology for grad students, and I'd ask them, which one of these do you feel like maybe is not as effective? And they'd say, avoidance coping. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, there is a time and a place where that is the exact coping skill you need. And that was a brilliant use of avoidance coping. So I just want to share that for all our listeners.
Thank you.
There's a time. Nice job, Mia. Yeah.
Strongly recommend it to other people, actually.
Oh, man. I can't. Thank you for sharing that. I can't even imagine what that was like. I mean, once you had that initial thought, close your eyes. What were some of the other thoughts and emotions you experienced in kind of the immediate aftermath
in
of all
that moment?
Yeah.
I wrote about this a little bit in that Medium piece that you referenced, but the thing that I remember most is the screaming that was coming out of my body in the moment after. I will never forget it. I've never heard anything like it. I could not control it in any way. And my first thought was that it was such a horrifying sound that I was actually scaring everyone else in the gym. And I wanted to stop it because I wanted to stop scaring them. Like, I knew that I was in some way or another okay, right? I knew I wasn't dying, but I could not stop it. It came from a place that I hope to never access again. It was this incredibly deep place, and it calmed down on its own. And I was so relieved when it stopped. And after that, I just, at that point, we had an EMS on site. One of my good friends, who's also a gymnast, and he hopped onto 911 and hopped in immediately to help me. And some other people had jumped in, and my friend Jackie jumped into the pit behind me. She's a physical therapist, and she just sat behind me with her hands on my shoulders. Another thing, here I will cry. I'll never forget the feeling of her hands on my shoulders. And she just said, we're okay. We're going to help you through this. And I just kept saying, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Until the EMTs came. I don't think I said anything else except, what am I going to do? And she said, I don't know, but we're going to figure it out. And I, like, another thing I will never forget was that, like, most sincere friendship.
Man, so that support just kicked in immediately.
Yes.
Incredible.
Yep. And now that I know what my legs looked like, which I didn't know for a long time, the fact that she was able to be so calm and that everyone was able to put aside the horror of it and just help me really still makes me very emotional and overwhelmed to think of. It's amazing.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm really glad that you have that, like, positive memory tied to the other parts of the memory too. Like,
totally.
I'm not saying it outweighs it, but it's good to hold. We always talk about how more than one thing can be true at once. So It's good that both of those things were true for you in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I know you had, and again, you write about this, a little bit of a grueling ambulance ride, some surgeries, et cetera. Kind of once you got through that initial phase, what were those first few months like?
It was almost in a dream state now. Like, almost, I can't believe that I did all these things and that my partner Eric went through all these things with me. The ambulance ride was impressive. It was dirt roads with 2 partially severed feet. That was an interesting thing. And I was in the hospital for 10 days, which was its own kind of mental torture. They were wonderful to me at the hospital, but the nights were so unbelievably lonely in a way that, again, I have not experienced since then. And getting out of there and feeling like I no longer had to endure nights like that was in and of itself somewhat healing. So once I got home and my cat was here, and she was so excited that there was a bed in the middle of the dining room because it was more easily accessible to her. Like, she the dinos came over to my house in advance of my arrival. They cleaned out my house. They made it wheelchair accessible. They set up the ramp. They set up a bed. They cleaned out my fridge of old food because we had been down in Tennessee for weeks, and they restocked it with food, and they were amazing. And my cat was like, this bed is everything that I've ever wanted. So when I got home, she was sprawled in the middle of it. And the next few months were just one metaphorical step at a time, of course. A ton of medical appointments. I didn't say this earlier, my fractures were open. They were about 5-inch. I have 5-inch scars on each leg. They were just wide open. So there was a huge infection risk, both for the wounds themselves and for the internal injuries, which was raising thoughts of potential amputations and things like that, words that I'd never imagined that I would hear. And I went back to work after about 2 weeks. I ended up going back to the gym to train from my wheelchair because I was desperate to get out of the house and start doing the normal things in my life that I love to do. And so I just kind of took it from there. You have no choice, right? You have no choice. With some injuries you do, and with this one, I simply didn't. It was either lay in bed with 2 broken legs or get in my wheelchair and go. And I'm very much the latter.
Yeah, you mentioned this. And again, another thing that you write about is that a doctor told you these were limb-threatening injuries. And you write a little bit again about what it was like to hear that. And then there was kind of a voice that changed your perspective. And I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, this is probably the most profound and poignant thing that has happened to me in this entire thing was a few days after it happened. So I'd had several surgeries on each leg already, and with a totally uncertain future, they were still very concerned about infection. And the doctor came in and he said that the level of the mechanical amount of damage was a cause of concern just for whether the tissue could recover from it. So there was that amputation risk from just, they said it was like being crushed by machinery. And then there was a secondary risk of the bones getting infected because they had been open and exposed to a gymnastics gym for quite a long time.
Okay.
And so I spent day after day. This is one reason that the nights were so excruciating in the hospital, because I was just constantly wondering if I was going to start feeling sick and start feeling an infection coming on. And he had said to me that if a bone infection starts, it's very hard to stop. And that what that usually leads to is amputation. And he said it so matter-of-factly. That was when he said it was limb-threatening injuries. And I just felt my entire soul leave my body. And of course, it was both my legs. It wasn't even one, but they both had nearly identical injuries. And he said that, and we just looked at each other and we're like, okay, so what happens now? And he's like, we just wait and see. And so that night, after that conversation in the hospital, and I was just laying awake thinking about what it might be like to lose my legs or to lose my feet or any permutation of those things. And I just was going over every scenario. Like, could I still work? Could I find a way to do gymnastics? There have been amputees on American Ninja Warrior. And I was just thinking of like all these possibilities, like things that could give me something positive to think about as I was sort of in this like deep grief and fear. And I just had this thought that crossed my body in an instant, and it came from somewhere I have no idea where, that just said, you know, Mia, if you lose your legs, you will not be the first person to ever lose their legs. A lot of people have lost their legs. And I'm from Boston. I grew up in Boston, and I immediately thought of the Boston Marathon bombing victims who here in Boston, of course, it was so unbelievably close. And you heard every day about stories of people who had lost various limbs. And then as the years went on since the bombing, more and more of them came back and ran the Boston Marathon with 1 or 2 prosthetic limbs. And everybody would know about it because the press here covered it very thoroughly, which was amazing. And I thought of them, and I just said, listen, if this happens to you, you've seen it for yourself, that other people have survived it and done it, and you're going to be fine, and you won't be able to control this outcome in any way. And so you're just going to be okay. You just have to wait and see what happens. And that moment of this person talking to me, I don't think it was me. I don't know. Some wiser person than me, talking to me. And I just said, okay. I said, okay, right out loud in the middle of the hospital. And I went to sleep in a way that I have probably not slept since. It was this like overwhelming sense of peace. It was something. I don't know. Whoever she was, thank you.
Right. Oh, that's incredible. Or maybe, you know how they say, I'm totally botching this, but like you only use 10% of your brain or something. It was like somehow the wisest part of your brain kicked in. It was like, listen.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing. It really, I can feel it in my body still, just that, okay. And
wow.
Let it, and go to sleep.
Athletes, we know you're always looking for new ways to get back to training and to prevent the next injury. We want to introduce you to a great new tool from our sponsor for this season, Lever Movement. The lever system is an innovative way to reduce your body weight while exercising on a treadmill, which means less impact on your joints. This is perfect for coming back from an injury, or if you're healthy now, to push your limits without fear holding you back. Whether you're returning to running, looking to increase your running volume, or wanting to add some serious speed work to your routine, Lever has got you covered.
And what's even better? The lever system is incredibly portable. It sets up on your home treadmill or at your local gym in under 2 minutes. Yes, you heard that right. Less than 2 minutes and you are ready to go. You may have seen elite athletes like Eilish McColgan and Kara Goucher using it. And now we've got an exclusive deal for you here at the Injured Athletes Club. Use the discount code TIAC20 to get 20% off your purchase. Trust me, your joints, Achilles, and sore muscles will thank you, and so will your future self.
Check out Lever today and take your training to the next level. Also, give them a follow on Instagram at Lever Movement and learn more about their products and their connection to the running community.
We've often called the Injured Athletes Club the best club you never want to join. Well, did you know that you can now pick up shirts, hats, journals, stickers, and more to show your solidarity and empower yourself on your recovery journey? That's right, we have merchandise. Some of it features our fantastic updated Injured Athletes Club logo, designed and then redesigned by the talented Emma Coomer. And then there are plenty of products with Coach Carey-isms on them too, sayings like,
Stronger every day. Obstacles to opportunities, and the all-time favorite, recovery is now my sport. You can head to injuredathletesclub.com/shop to browse everything that's available. Pick up something for yourself as a special treat, or you can buy your favorite injured athlete a gift. We also sell gift cards. And when you purchase, you're supporting this show and all our work for injured athletes. So don't forget, injuredathletesclub.com/shop and pick up your Injured Athletes Club merch today.
One other thing that you write about is kind of your loss of identity. And this is, I know, part of that too, but then even beyond that point that, you'd built your life and career around movement, and suddenly you couldn't do a lot of the things that you used to be able to. And, there were some versions of Mia that maybe you had to let rest or let go of, and some maybe new ones that you were welcoming, which I thought was a really profound way of thinking about it. But yeah, can you talk some about that identity piece? Because that's huge for so many athletes, especially when it is like kind of a life-altering injury in this way.
Absolutely. The identity part has been excruciating, actually. It has, and that has not eased off for me in any way in the year and 4 months or whatever it's been. I knew it immediately, and it kept getting more and more real the further I got from the injury, which was worse and worse for me. In the beginning, I was like, okay, well, this is terrible. But, I've always come back from every injury. And it became more and more apparent that whoever I was and whatever I was before this would not be back in the same way ever again, no matter what I ended up being able to do. And I really miss her. She was really fun. And so this part is really the most, it's okay. You can bear all this. It really is the most excruciating part to feel that whatever was true for you before is not necessarily true for you now. And in so many ways that athletes see themselves, to have all of them taken in an instant is very hard to understand. And the bottom line is that I just really miss her. She was really fun. She was super bold and aggressive and sporty and trying new things. And I hope to regain her cheek maybe in sport in the future, but for right now she's not there. She can't be. And I really miss that part. So leaning into writing especially has been the main thing. And I know both of you have talked frequently about the importance of finding other parts of your identity and other interests that you might have to fill in some of the gaps. that are left by losing your sport. And for me, it was writing, and I didn't do it intentionally. I just was laying in bed with 2 broken legs, and I was like, hey, what if I wrote a book? So so I just lay there and wrote a book, and published it less than a year later. And that was very helpful for me to find something that had nothing to do with my injury. Writing, I didn't have to write about my injury. I didn't have to adapt to it in any way to be able to write. And if I were going to talk to somebody who had recently done what I did, I would say that finding something that had nothing to do with my injury was a huge part of just letting my brain rest on that one topic for a little while.
Yeah, I love that too, because I think a lot of times people feel like if they do that, that somehow they're not honoring their athletic identity, or they're leaving it behind. But really it's, this is such a big topic, because so many athletes struggle with the identity piece. And even, you talked about like injury being human, like struggles with identity is very human too, even if you're not an athlete. Like this is something that we get really attached to a specific identity, and the idea of exploring another part of yourself feels like a threat instead of an opportunity, right? So I love that you were like, well, here are all the things I can't do, but what can I do? I guess I'll write a book. Like you organically started looking at another part of your identity. But I really love, and I talk with my athletes about this sometimes, like it's okay to grieve the path you didn't get to take. And it's okay to grieve the person miss the person that you were before you got injured, because in some ways you can't ever be that person again, right? It's impossible because you went through this really intense experience. Yeah. And there's no removing that knowledge and experience from your existence. So you can't go back to the same person that you were. And that doesn't mean that you don't come around and do something amazing and come back to, right? Like we talk about the rebound in our book, Rebound. You're going to bounce back. You might not know what direction, and you might not bounce in the same way. But so to know it's okay to grieve that and to miss that and to acknowledge that. So the fact that you're able to do that is pretty significant. And I'm glad yes, we're very big fans of journaling. I'm glad you found that.
It's true. And the other thing about identity that I've noticed is that when I meet anybody who I have not met, who I've met since I got hurt, I feel like they don't know me and that they can't know me. And, and for people that I've become really close to since I got hurt, that it almost hurts me to know that I'm like, this person won't actually ever know who I am or who I was. They're meeting an entirely different person than who I used to be, even though I don't really feel like I've changed, but it feels so completely 180 from that regard. It's like a before and after, which I imagine that people who suffer losses feel that way. There's a before and after in a massive wall that separates them.
Yeah. And some of those things just are, I feel like we talk a lot about ways to cope or ways to get through things, but like things are just hard and they just are because life is.
Right.
The most profound thing I've ever heard you say. I'm quoting you. We're putting your quote.
Yeah. Well, and the other piece of this too, of course, is that it isn't just like your identity and your personality, which of course is very important. It was also like your livelihood, which I know is also something that can be really challenging in these situations. So can you talk some about the financial impact too, and how you've kind of worked with your business and career on all of that?
Absolutely. That has been a huge part of it. The financial hit was massive. I do have pretty good health insurance, and it still has cost me, I don't even know at this point, $25,000, $30,000, an unbelievable amount of money, even with so much of it covered by insurance. And so that alone has been an interesting change to have that year after year, and to know that that's still going to be ongoing for a while. But from a work perspective, it was interesting. Before this happened, I had worked with a lot of trainers. They had been my coworkers who had gotten hurt and had a hard time being a trainer or coach with an injury, because they felt like they could no longer be the person they were modeling, right? They didn't think that they almost deserved to teach athletics if they couldn't do athletics themselves. And I was super scared that I would feel the same way when this happened, but that did not happen for me at all. Some of that comes from confidence in your abilities. And I've been in this field for a long time, and I knew that I could still be an effective coach for people with my injuries and from my wheelchair. I will tell you a sweet story, though. We did an event for the gym in Harvard Square, and I was in a wheelchair at the time, and I had my personal trainer sweatshirt on, and a man in a wheelchair came up to me, and he said, "I saw your shirt says personal trainer. Are you a personal trainer from your wheelchair?" And I said, "Yeah, I've been working. I hope to get out of the wheelchair, but I have been working normally from my chair." And he said, "I hope you get out of it. That's wonderful. It gave me so much joy to see someone like me in a personal trainer sweatshirt, because I have never seen that before." And we had a delightful conversation where we talked about various aspects of being in a chair, and I got to hear some of his story. And it was interesting for me from two ways. One, of course, reminding me that our field desperately needs more representation and acceptance of all kinds of trainers, obviously, getting away from the young, hot 20-year-old trainers and understanding that a lot of people have a lot of lessons to teach in fitness. But secondly, that trainers without disabilities, able-bodied trainers, make such an effort to reach out and to prove that they can help people with disabilities to succeed in the gym. And not to be like, "Oh, I don't know what to do with that," or "I don't know how to help that person." And that is severely lacking in our field and in our industry. And it's something that I have always coached our trainers to work on. To don't be afraid to ask questions. People will tell you their own boundaries. So lean in and say, "Hey, I really want to help you. Can you tell me more about what's going on and how we can work together to do this?" And working from the chair and having that conversation with that man really helped me understand a little bit more of that aspect of training. And I think it made me a better trainer for sure.
That all is super interesting. And I'm thinking about like what you were saying about like not having the feeling that you couldn't work that some of your colleagues had. And I wonder too, I was thinking about this earlier when you were talking about writing the book, like you were even in the process of writing the book about becoming a personal trainer and like how to be an effective personal trainer, you were like acknowledging that the expertise of that is like within you and you can share it. It doesn't depend on your physical ability in that moment. So I wonder if the act of writing the book even was, and getting that out and thinking through all that also like reinforced that for you. Do you think that was maybe the case?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I hadn't thought about it that way, but for sure. I mean, I believe anyone can coach. I despise when people think that someone who has the wrong body couldn't be an effective coach for them. It's a huge problem, again, in our field. It's a huge problem in physical therapy and in medicine as well, beyond the gym. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've had some, over the years worked with injured athletes that were also coaches, and felt like they weren't going to be as effective as a coach. And then they continued to coach and ended up needing to build different skills and realized that there were things they couldn't rely on anymore. So they had to expand the way that they worked with their athletes. And a lot of them came back and would tell me like, "Oh, there's things I do now that I never did before that are absolutely part of my coaching system now." So it's really incredible, but it makes sense, right? That initial thought of like, "Oh my God, I can't be a good coach if I can't demonstrate what I'm trying to coach," like because that was the thing that they relied on so much to the point. And so it's been really interesting to see that like, okay, but if I can't do that, it's kind of, this might sound silly, but what it reminds me of is there were so many industries during COVID that were like, or before COVID, I'll say, so many industries before COVID that were like, "We can't do remote. We can't work. That's not effective." And then it's like, until you have to, and you're like, "Oh, actually this works really well." Like, there are different ways it's hard though when it's different. It feels like, but I don't want to do different. I want to do it the way that I did. So I love, what a great story. How incredible to just have, isn't it incredible to have one interaction with a person and have that open up things in such a profound way?
Yeah. And I think also that when you get hurt at whatever field you work in, your empathy increases automatically. I think I was an empathetic person before, but there's no question that it has grown. Anybody who works with other people, especially if they work in a health-related field, could not possibly go through this and not immediately be better at their work, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do want to talk for a minute about maybe interactions that weren't as good, because we talk a lot in the Injured Athletes Club about how to respond to comments from other people, whether well-meaning or ill-delivered or downright hurtful. And it sounds like maybe you had some of that in your life, people who said, oh, only you hadn't done gymnastics, maybe this wouldn't have happened, or other things. And yeah, tell us more about that and how you've kind of dealt with that.
Yes, right off the bat, people immediately were like, oh, I bet you really regret doing gymnastics. And, oh, I bet you regret doing that, or you shouldn't have been trying that. That was almost immediate, and it astonished me. I mean, I was barely out of the hospital and people were already saying that. And I would just be like, no, I don't know. I love gymnastics. This was an accident. And fault is not really the word that you can use when things like this go wrong, but it wasn't even my fault. I didn't even do anything really that wrong. Like, it just was, my teammates who saw it all happen were like, it all looked fine. Sometimes stuff just goes really wrong. And it's hard to sometimes explain that to people who don't strive in that way. They just, all they can see is the risk of it without understanding the joy that comes along with it. I also recently had 2 months ago, I had a follow-up surgery on one of my legs, which went very well. And so far anyway. And when I was on crutches and in a cast after that surgery, a lot of people that I ran into were like, oh my God, you got hurt again? Oh, you're always injured. And I was like, like that was torture to hear. And of course, that kind of ties back to the identity thing. I was like, is this my thing now? Like, that I'm just always broken or always hurt, and people have to keep asking how I'm doing and supporting me. And that alone gave me all kinds of mental things going on. But yeah, sometimes people really don't know what to say. And if I were offering advice on how to support very badly injured people, I think I would say that the best things that people did for me were cleaning my house was amazing, because my partner, Eric, could not keep up with it on his own. I was absolutely unable to do that. So people who came over and helped us clean were huge. And I had friends who offered to come over and sit in silence. They were like, can I just sit in the room with you and read a book? And that sounded so much more appealing to me than people who wanted to come and chat over and over and over and over again, because you do have to relive your injury. Of course, every new person you see wants to talk about it. And I don't mind that. I'm pretty open about that, probably more than most, but it's not easy and exhausting. And sometimes I wanted to see my friends without feeling like I needed to perform in some way or entertain them with my injury or some. Of course, that's not what they thought, but it's how it felt to me inside. And so my friends who just said, hey, you want some company? Can I bring you some kale? Like, one of my friends just brought me 2 giant bags of kale because she knows how much I love it. She's like, can I just bring some kale over and we can watch TV? And I was like, yes, please.
I really thought that sentence was going to be cake, not kale. I'm glad you love it.
I will not try to convert anybody to kale today, but
no, I have a huge bag in my fridge right now.
There you go.
Well, yeah. And I know it's not, that's really helpful. And I know having people offer those things is really helpful too, because I know we aren't always great at asking for help as athletes and people who view ourselves as independent. So I'm sure there were still things you had to ask for. What was that like for you?
Not easy. I'm a very independent person. I don't like asking for help. My therapist calls me hyper independent, but she's not always right. So, but it was an unusual thing for me to feel like I needed so much help. One aspect that was nice was, as I said earlier, the dynos came and did a lot of things before I ever got here, and having my friends be ahead of the game made things much easier for me. I was able to come home from Tennessee, where this happened, and just come into a house that was already prepared for me. And I would not have known how or what to ask for if that hadn't happened. I would have been completely baffled in every way and frustrated. So having a support team that anticipated my needs was very, very helpful for me. And I understand that that's not something that everybody has. In terms of going through recovery, I mean, asking for help is just so hard sometimes. Sometimes I had to ask for money, which was brutal. Asking for rides places was also brutal because I could only go with people who could fit my wheelchair in the car, and they couldn't be very helpful in getting me in and out of cars, which was sometimes tricky. Like I've got a really good upper body. I'm pretty capable to maneuver myself, and that was okay. But it was, I could tell it was uncomfortable for them to watch me kind of flopping around and doing my thing. But it's in the end you have to. I was just like, well, your options are to not pay this bill or to ask someone to help you with it. So why don't you ask somebody who has demonstrated that they would be willing to do that for you, and really trusting that my friends were my friends, I guess. And that Eric, my partner, really meant it when he said he was going to be here for me no matter what. He was amazing too. Having a partner at home who was willing to clean my commode every day, was humbling.
Right.
It was humbling, and seeing him just do it silently, I don't mean that like wordlessly, but just without complaint or grumbling was very meaningful to me and very kind and what partners are supposed to do.
Yeah. You mentioned your therapist there, and I feel like therapy is maybe also something that has been helpful for you. Is that something that you just started in this process? And can you talk a little bit about how it's helped you navigate all this?
Yes. I've never been to therapy before, and I didn't even actually know what goes on at therapy. I hope my therapist listens to this because she will laugh. I love to joke that I'm a therapy failure. It goes along with not liking to ask for help. I have a very hard time in therapy, actually. I started going after I got hurt because a lot of people were like, hey, you're going to have a lot of shit on your mind and a lot of baggage and a lot of problems, especially when you're ready to return to sport. And so you might want to get ahead of the game and talk to a therapist. And I was like, sure, that sounds fine. And then I got into my first therapy session and we just kind of stared at each other. She's excellent at her job, I want to be clear, but she was waiting for me to share something. And I was like, well, what happens now? Tell me about you. What do you do? And I've gotten a little bit better at it. It's been very interesting for me. I still have a very hard time opening up in therapy. It's almost like I want to stay protected from all this and don't want to really open up the deep wounds that this caused, to me. And so we've been working on that, which in and of itself is a really interesting process because I can feel myself not wanting to go there, not wanting to share. I'll talk all day about the cut and dried details, but as soon as she's like, well, how do you feel about it? I'm like, no.
We don't talk about that.
No, do you have another question? Because that's not the one that I'd like to answer. So therapy has actually been really interesting in a completely different way than I expected. Once I learned what was expected of me in therapy, I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. What else could we do in therapy? It's been that's a whole different world of asking for help that I am still totally exploring.
Well, and it is, I mean, to your point, like it's a lot to deal with it because it is not like an easy process and you're already dealing with things that aren't easy. So it is an interesting, it's all very an interesting position.
It is. And I'm sure both of you as, in the work that you do, you're like, well, I'm not going to bite you. Just tell me a little bit about what's going on. And from my angle, I'm like, this is terrifying. This is, I am not prepared for this level of inquiry.
I've had many of my clients say, oh my God, this work is so much harder than like all of the other physical things I've ever done.
Oh, totally. Totally. I'll do physical therapy all day, but emotional therapy.
Well, and to that point, you have done physical therapy too. You've done a lot of physical stuff. You mentioned wheeling to the gym as soon as you can. As soon as you could, what was kind of what has the reentry been like? And yeah, how have you been kind of finding your way through all that? Especially since I know it's not, probably doctors didn't have a ton of answers for what you could and couldn't do, right?
That's right. I was completely left alone from a medical perspective on this recovery. I had 4 physical therapists actually at various points for various parts of this, because it was more complicated than any one person was really equipped to handle. And my medical team, my doctors and surgeons were all kind of like, good luck, see what happens, let us know. And they didn't really know what to expect of it. I don't think dealt with people like me very often who are extremely knowledgeable about the human body, about exercise, and with a very intense amount of willpower. And so I think, did not expect that I was like, hey, I'm ready to go. Where do I start? And if you're not going to tell me, then that's fine. I'll just go figure it out. But I do, I can see very clearly that if I did not have my background and my expertise going into this, that the outcome would be absolutely different, which is one of the things I want to write a book about, sort of about this, based in this incident, but about how to help people be able to take care of themselves better and understand their own bodies and understand exercise and understand physical therapy, and understand how to navigate the confusing things their doctors tell them in a better way, because it's so clear to me now that if I didn't have that for myself, I would not have been able to do anything at all. Let me see, in January. So where are we? Hang on. Okay. So I got hurt in August of 2023. And before I got hurt, I ran in a master's track race, which I did spontaneously because that's the kind of person that I am. And I came in last in the 100 and I came in last in the 200, which were my 2 races that I ran. However, there were only 3 of us that ran in the 200. And so I automatically qualified to nationals because I placed top 3. So all of that happened before I got hurt. And then I got hurt and I was in the hospital with like halos around my legs and talking about